they want to be an influencer, that's cool. I personally would not trust that person with any of my money. You've got a lot of coaches that aren't well educated coming in. I've done a Hyrox, been training for a year, got 5,000 followers. I'm going to be an online coach. Olympic weightlifters will train for 4 years to add 1 to 2 kilos to their total. If you try to rush the process, you will exponentially increase your risk of burning out.
If you're the sort of person that hears that and goes, yeah, 5 years, let's fucking go, then you'll be set apart. Every Hyrox competitor in the world looking to improve the Hyrox this season, what would you tell them? Hey everyone, just a quickie before we get into the conversation. The podcast is always going to be free, so I'm never going to ask you to pay for anything. But if you could do me the kindness of subscribing and maybe leaving a review, that would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you and enjoy the episode. Jack Collins, welcome to the podcast. I thought we'd start by asking what's brought you to where you are today and the work that you do?
When I was younger, I was awful at every sport and just kind of never really got into anything. And then I started playing golf. So I started playing golf when I was 11 and kind of took to it quite quickly. And that was me for the next probably about 7 years. I played golf pretty kind of full on. I then went to college to play golf. And in my first year, we had strength and conditioning to kind of facilitate our golf, and just kind of really took to that. And I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and I was like, did I take to S&C because of golf? Because I'm someone who moves quite well. I've got quite good body like awareness. And I kind of just took to lifting quite quickly and became like quite good. Like, I am not strong by any means, but I kind of, out of my class, was someone who just took to the weights quite quickly. And then kind of the love for golf kind of waned a little bit, and then just really fell in love with the gym. As soon as I was 17, passed my driving test, drove straight to the gym, joined the gym, and then from there it was kind of 5 times a week, whatever, plus every week for the last 10 years really. And then when I was 18 and left college, did my personal trainer qualification straight away, so 7 weeks full time, got that, started PTing, realized quite quickly that I didn't have the amount of knowledge that I believed I needed to justify charging people for my time, and also didn't quite have the social skills required. I think that's definitely something that a lot of people overlook when it comes to personal training. I think the ability to kind of communicate with people, get people to, like you and want to essentially spend 1 to 3 hours a week in a one-to-one setting with you, I think that's massively overlooked, and definitely something that I was aware I lacked. So kind of took a bit of a backseat, kind of went and got a full-time office job. After about 6 months of that, I was like, I cannot do this for much longer. So me and my friend came up with the idea that we'd go traveling. So from there, we very much kind of did the stereotypical Southeast Asian circuit for a few months. And then I had, prior to that, I had been doing CrossFit. That's kind of my main kind of training, and was very kind of clear on I wanted to be a CrossFit coach. Had the awareness that you could go to, a CrossFit gym anywhere in the world. I knew you could go to Asia, I knew you could go to America, and that was kind of my goal. So I knew that when I got back from traveling, I was going to do my level 1. I was either going to try and get a job in a gym, or I was going to try and get a job abroad coaching. And that never really kind of happened, because the local gyms around me, there was only a couple and they both weren't hiring. But there was someone that was actually my assistant strength and conditioning coach from college. He had started a kind of group training program for women. It was like a group training program exclusively for women to help them kind of get into lifting weights and training properly. And he was quite busy and he needed someone to help with some of the other sessions. So I started doing a bit of cover for him when he had like holidays and stuff like that, because it was just him. So it was like, if he wasn't there, there was no one to run the sessions, and people were paying for, 3 sessions a week. And then that just kind of grew and grew and grew. Alongside that, I was also doing weightlifting classes at a gym. I was doing a little bit of one-to-one PT. I was also working part-time in the office job that I left before I went traveling. So that was kind of my year to year and a half of doing the stereotypical, not massively yet successful PT thing where you just work everything possible alongside a normal job, trying to train as well. And it was a bit chaotic, but so yeah. And then eventually he found a premises and he opened a gym called the Empowerment Training Centre in Northampton, which we then started training men as well. So it became kind of a premium group training facility. It wasn't CrossFit, it wasn't Hyrox, it was kind of good quality strength and conditioning with kind of a body composition focus for the general population person. And then that grew and grew and grew, became a team of 3, team of 4, team of 5, team of 6, team of multiple other people doing other forms of jobs. And I kind of rose up alongside that and helped grow it, was head coach, became kind of an operations director-esque person whilst also still coaching, 15, 20 hours a week as part of that. And then we became a Hyrox affiliated gym. We were one of the first Hyrox affiliated gyms, definitely in the Midlands, but one of in the UK, I believe.
What year are we at now, just to bring us?
Where are we at? So the gym opened in 2019. And then I left at the start of 2024. And I'd been online for about 10 months before that. So we were a Hyrox affiliated gym, kind of were taking north of 100 people to each event, which was pretty cool. And then I just kind of fell in love with that, the training style, fell in love with kind of coaching those particular people and that more performance driven aspect. My training was very much like I'm all in on learning as much as I can, being the best athlete that I can be, still working on that. And then from there, really started doing the online alongside the coaching. Very quickly realized that I wanted to do this full time. Like I wanted to coach this particular demographic. I wanted to work for myself. And then that's kind of led me to where we are today. So I've been full time since the start of 2024, online coach, coaching people specifically for Hyrox and other kind of functional fitness hybrid-esque goals. And that's me in a nutshell and where I am today.
Thanks for your nutshell. Why this demographic? What was it about this?
I think, as I said, like I wanted to coach CrossFit originally. I've always had that performance-driven kind of outlook on training. Probably stemmed for that kind of golf S&C period. And obviously with the gym that I was coaching at, we did have that as part of the product. Like we had the Hyrox classes, kind of the Hyrox direction for some people. We did things like turf games, national fitness games, and we kind of had classes that were tailored towards that. And we would be like, right, we're putting in as a gym, 5 teams of 5 to turf games, who's in? And then we would kind of plan some specific sessions around that and kind of create like a bit of a community for that specific competition, and just really enjoyed programming for coaching those particular sessions. Obviously, it's something that I did myself. Like I've done CrossFit competitions, I've done turf games, NFG, Hyrox, whatever, and learned an incredible amount from the more kind of gen pop, everyday person, body composition, fat loss, muscle gain, working around, 3 kids, busy job, family, like learn a tremendous amount from that. And I can't stand here and say that I didn't have more to learn, because there's an exponential amount of things that could still have been learned. But I kind of felt like I wasn't being challenged as a coach. I wasn't learning the things that I wanted to learn, and I wasn't necessarily having the conversations that I wanted to be having. Whereas with the people that were doing Hyrox, the people that were doing kind of Turf Games NFG, through the kind of the coaching calls that I was having with those particular people. Because the way we essentially worked at the gym was you would have like a number of clients that you managed. So if we had 250 members, I might have 80 members that I was personally responsible for. I would help them with their nutrition. We would have coaching calls, but then they would come to the group sessions. And I just found that I was really enjoying and invested in the coaching of those particular people. And I just knew that I wanted to learn as much as I could about this, for myself as well. Like, I wanted to be able to better myself and my performance, but I really enjoyed helping those people achieve their goals and improve in those particular areas. And yeah, since kind of stepping away from the gym and being online and having a little bit more time available, like the number of courses that I've done, the number of books that I've read, the number of like all avenues of learning, I've just exponentially kind of grown as a coach, and just love it.
How would you assess the online coaching space?
How long have we got? I think as someone who's been in the industry for a while, both from a professional perspective and a personal perspective, like I've been training and kind of consuming content since I was 17, 18, which the fact that I can now say is north of a decade ago does make me feel a little bit older, even though I'm only 29. But having been in different areas of the industry, so my first introduction to the gym was obviously S&C, but I very much was in bodybuilding. Like, bodybuilding was, I followed it as a sport. I trained like a bodybuilder. I consumed content from bodybuilders. That was what I wanted to be, and that's what I wanted to do. Because CrossFit, it was only really just coming around like 2014? I'm trying to think, when was I? So it was 2025 now. 10, 11 years ago. Yeah, probably 2013, 14 was when kind of CrossFit was like just about kind of coming up and being a little bit more mainstream. They were investing in the media, the YouTube. So prior to that, it was bodybuilding.com and, bodybuilders prepping for the Olympia. That was like the only real content that was out there. So That's what people naturally gravitated to. So I've kind of witnessed different camps progress through this kind of online space. So it was like the London Muscle bulking Bible ebook era. That was really what it was. It was ebooks, and people started making YouTube channels and posting topless pics on Instagram. That was, the start of it. And then CrossFit kind of started to follow that, and people started to move towards that functional fitness, like bicep curls are stupid, you should be doing overhead squats, and anything that isn't compound and functional is pointless and stupid. And then that kind of moved into people started coaching people online for CrossFit because people wanted to go to the games and whatever. And then from there, it kind of then progressed, and online coaching for the Gen Pop became more of a thing. People were delivering programs kind of through Google Sheets and video check-ins and things like that. That kind of became more of a thing. Apps were still kind of in their infancy. People using apps were mostly like functional fitness athletes. But then nowadays it's kind of then progressed on from there, and you've got people doing more kind of Gen Pop coaching through apps and kind of a little bit at a higher level. So that's kind of progressed. But now
Pop, general population.
General population. So people just not athletes, people that just want to kind of look, feel better kind of thing. And then now with the introduction of Hyrox, you have a lot of coaches that are getting into the industry, and that's their first experience of training. That's their first experience of coaching. being coached, learning. So it's, I liken it to CrossFit in like 2012, 13. So you've got a lot of coaches that aren't particularly well experienced, well educated, coming in and being like, I've done a Hyrox, I've been training for a year, I've got 5,000 followers, I'm going to be an online coach. And I'm just like, you are so far away from that. But because of the nature of this social media driven world that we live in, they can see their favorite influencer with 1 million followers setting up an app, selling a whatever program, and think that that's the path to that. And it is so far away from the truth. And as I said, like, having gone through these cycles and seen the progression of all these different things, you know, you can kind of draw a bit of a map to what success looks like, really. And it's a very positive thing in terms of the ability to access so many people and the ability to have an impact on so many people is amazing. But because of that ability to access so many people, and vice versa, because of our ability to access so many people, being able to figure out who is an appropriate person to trust with your money, with your time, with your health and fitness is incredibly challenging, because the average person wouldn't be able to distinguish between, oh, that person's, you know, world record holder, Hyrox athlete. Clearly, they obviously know what they're doing. Well, do they? When you actually are able to kind of break it down and go, right, okay, well, this world champion Hyrox athlete, Hyrox is a very new sport, so achieving a world record is more attainable than perhaps in other more established sports. That will definitely change and is changing. But when you look at the people that are coming in and achieving those feats in such a short space of time, it's not because they are the most incredible coach or Hyrox specific athlete. It is because they have 10 plus years of training at a high level as a swimmer, as a sprinter, as a team sport athlete. And yeah, they've trained since they were 5 years old, basically as a professional athlete. That's why they look the way they do. That's why they perform the way that they do. And that's why they have a base of knowledge that they do, because they have worked perhaps with GB coaches for the last 10, 15 years. It's not because they have done lots of coaching qualifications. It's not because they have successfully coached a lot of people to a high level. It's just because of their situation. And yeah, being able to distinguish between those two things for the kind of the everyday person is a challenge that I also find myself kind of getting caught up in sometimes. But yeah, the online coaching space, coming back to the original question, is a bit of a wild west. It's getting better in terms of, I think people are becoming more discerning. They're becoming a little bit more guarded around who they trust, because I think a lot of people have been burnt in the past. And it used to be you could throw up not for myself, but people used to be able to throw up a topless picture and be like, hey, DM me for coaching, and people would invest. That is not the case anymore. You have to spend a lot more time and effort to develop that know, like, and trust, because people are much more aware of the fact that there are people out there with ill intentions.
All right, so let's just summarize this for people. So give us what the top 3 things people should look for before they invest in an online coach in Hyrox. Not a sub 60 in the profile pic, in the profile.
So for me, what I would say is you need to look at the content they're putting out and the way in which they're putting it out. To really kind of distill it down is, if from an Instagram perspective, let's say, because that's probably the platform that people are most familiar with and where people probably spend the most time, is that if you look at their content, and all of their content is their training, their posts that are like, try this running workout, try this killer Hyrox AMRAP. If that's, and then here's what I wore to the gym today, get ready with me. Like, if that's all of their content, if that's the only content that they have, they are not a coach. They are some combination of influencer athlete, because all they have to offer you is what they are doing and what they are wearing and what they are eating.
I've just thought of a possible interjection here. What you could actually just not look at the photos and just look at the caption. I think that would tell you a lot about this person's background.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, if you've gone to university and stuff, you're not the sort of person that's just going to slap up. I mean, you might be a little bit lazy, but most of the people who have scientific knowledge like to put all the detail in the caption. That's something I've noticed, because obviously I speak to a lot of people on this.
Yeah, 100%. I think the people that have that deeper level of understanding are able to communicate it in a way that helps you understand it, but also provides appropriate levels of context. So if their caption is, try this killer Hyrox AMRAP, and the caption is, was in a puddle after this, just like something that just helps you in absolutely no way, shape or form.
Yeah, you might get a big old dopamine buzz off it, but it's actually you're not going to build any endurance or strength.
Yeah, you've just posted a workout that they could have found anywhere on the internet. It's not specific to them, it's not specific to you, it is purely just what they have done. And that is fine if they are just an athlete or they want to be an influencer. That's cool. I personally would not trust that person with any of my money. However, kind of coming back to like, how would you distinguish between someone who knows what they're talking about and someone who doesn't? If you don't have that kind of level of understanding of what you're looking for, that's a bit more difficult. As like, a coach and someone who's slightly more well versed in these areas, when I'm looking at someone's content, if I'm looking for a coach, I'm going to be looking at, I can clearly see if they know what they're talking about based on how they describe the training that they're doing, how they describe the results that they're posting of their clients, how they helped other people achieve certain things. If I can clearly see that they understand that process, like it's not just this person went from a 70-minute Hyrox to a 60-minute Hyrox because we smashed their running. It's like, well, no, specifically, what did you do to their running? How did you approach that process? If I can clearly see that and you've made me understand that point A to point B process, that's going to make me more likely to invest in that particular person. So I think for me, if you are looking at someone's Instagram, let's say, you're going to be looking for, are they demonstrating results? Like, can you clearly see that they have helped someone get from either where you are to where you want to be or beyond? And do they understand that process? So like, it's not, as I said, it's not just, this is Sandra, she went from 80 minutes to 60 minutes. It's like, well, how did they do that? What did you do to facilitate that process?
It wasn't just newbie gains, because Sandra's been sat on her ass for the last 10 years.
Yeah, exactly that. And so there's that. There's sharing helpful information. So not just like, here's the calories and macros you need to eat, but like actual tangible information that you can take away and apply and communicate it in a way that you understand. That's, I think, really important. That's definitely a skill of a more well-versed coach, is someone who doesn't just use a lot of big words. If someone has to communicate it in the same way that they read it in a textbook or from a course, then they don't fully understand that thing. They are just repeating something that they have read or heard. Whereas if they are communicating something to you and you understand it, that is a sign that they perhaps understand that thing on a slightly deeper level. And then in the language that they're using, it's like, not just here's what I did, it's here's why I did it, and here's how it could potentially have a positive impact for you and how you might go about applying that thing, kind of thing. So there's, and then depending on the level that you're coaching people to, or depending on the level that you're at, that will then change. So for example, I work with the team at the Red On Performance Center. They are a very science driven coaching team. So the language that they use is very scientific. So they are, for the most part, they definitely do have people at varying levels, but for the most part, they are speaking to a higher level of person. They are referencing scientific papers. They are referencing the science quite heavily because that is what they are basing all of their coaching decisions on. So that is going to speak to someone like me who has not the same level of knowledge and understanding as them, but who understands the value of that and can discern
Geeks.
And kind of, break down what they are saying, how it's important.
Yeah. People like to geek out on that stuff. Like I follow them because I'm obsessed with that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, exactly that. And then the kind of the final thing is like that whole know, like, and trust thing. Like, do you trust that person? Do you like them? Do you trust them? Do you want to invest in that particular person? Do you believe that that person can help you achieve the thing that you want to achieve? Or, do they have a product that you believe is worth what they are charging and you want to invest in that particular person? It doesn't always have to be the absolute best coach with the best knowledge. They just have to be able to help you move forward from where you are now. And they are offering a service that is, you can justify the cost of that service. You see value in what they are providing.
Yeah, and this is maybe not like a full razor, but one thing to look out for, I was just thinking, is we said no, like, and trust, but like the trust thing, like social clout, it's a little bit, I know it's a bit of a vanity metric, not necessarily the followers, but who is following them. So like I looked on your profile, like Zara Piergiani follows you, so straight away like there's a checkbox because Zara is reputable. Do you know what I mean? And there's other people in there, and I think I've nearly fallen into this trap where I get followed by a lot of Hyrox people because I think they want to come to the podcast, and then I'll be like, so they'll follow me, and I'm like, wow, like fucking hell, like 300,000 followers or something crazy. They got a blue tick. Yeah. Nicely written bio with the Hyrox times and stuff. Jacked as fuck on the sled pull profile pic. And I'm like, all right, this guy looks interesting. And then I go, oh, like no one's following them in my community. Or maybe like one or two. Do you know what I mean? So like when you're part of a community, you start to notice patterns and you're like, okay, right, like there's like 50 people following them that are within the Hyrox world or whatever. But it's very easy to buy followers. It's very easy to buy for a blue tick. It's very easy to optimize your Instagram bio. And if you were doing a fuckload of bodybuilding throughout your 20s and then got a bit of a cardio base, it's pretty easy to do a sub one, whatever, Hyrox. So so that's probably to want to look out for. So it's good because it's like they're like, it's almost like the blockchain, like everyone's kind of just cross-referencing people. So as well, like don't just jump in and follow people. Like that will help the community at large be a little bit more discerning. But it's hard because if someone follows you, you're kind of like, oh well, let's be friends. Do you know what I mean? So like, and it's something I've had to deal with as well. Like where like you start to get more followers, and then you just kind of, I think when you're in the early days, you just kind of follow back to just be nice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, right now, if now people are going to look at who I'm following as a signal of trust, I have a responsibility as a content creator, or whatever I do, to be able to do that, or people who are like slightly prominent in like this like Hyrox community. So
and I think something on that as well, kind of tying back to what we were saying about how do you discern between the people who maybe are more trustworthy than others. I think there's definitely a level of effort going into the content as well, both, and that doesn't just mean like high quality, hyper edited content, because like, you know, if you've got money, you can do that. Like if you give a videographer $1,000 a month, all of your content can look movie quality. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it is good quality content. It is just high quality visual and audio content, and that's definitely a difference. But like if all of someone's content is just running videos of them just, you know, that shot at the minute, which is the kind of viral running shot that everyone just seems to be posting and posting and posting and getting millions of views. Not to call anyone out, but like just the first name that comes to my head is like Jay Dearden. Like unbelievable athlete. I know he's a good coach as well, because I know prior to being an athlete, he was a coach. And I know he's worked at, you know, Hybrid Performance Center, and he's like head coach for, you know, the rep gym and things like that. Good coach. But just because that's the example that probably people in the Hyrox space will most clearly recognize, is he just posts the same or similar shot of him running with some kind of audio over the top. And it's just like,
yeah, he's found the formula and he's rinse and repeat.
Millions. But then now that you've seen that, you will start seeing that shot everywhere. Was it like Meg Sutherland? Her Instagram looks the same. Every other video, or 2 out of every 3 videos, is that just her running. And it's just the same shot again and again and again, because it's a really cool shot. It's really engaging. It's really dynamic, and it gets millions of views. So it helps grow a significant following, because it's just pumped out to the absolute masses. If someone's content is just things like that at varying levels, like if it is literally just short clips, maybe that just, you know, black and white short clips, whatever, that's going to help someone grow a massive following, but it's not providing, you know, any value. And that could be, you know, you break that down into, if someone's content is just a slideshow of these short clips with no real value or context added to them through the caption. Like you could post a video, like I do it myself. I'll post a video from Hyrox, slow motion, whatever. Maybe I'm looking a bit jacked, in the right angles and the right lighting. But in the caption, I will try to then provide the context. That's just me being a little bit lazy with, I don't have to go and film something. I can just take this clip, but I can provide value through the caption and provide context and, you know, help through there.
Yeah.
So that for me is like, if someone's content is just no effort, really short clips, that's going to help them go viral and build a massive following. But the quality of those followers is probably not going to be the highest. And kind of that's the point I'm trying to make with that, really, is kind of coming back to the point about followers and following. I think followers have been massively devalued because the ability to go viral is so much higher than it perhaps used to be. And it's all about engagement than anything else. For me, I've really tried to lean into that the thousand true fans kind of aspect, both in terms of who I'm following and who I'm being followed by. Like I am cutthroat with who I follow now. When I first got into the online space, the guidance was, you know, follow for follow. It was like you followed people who you perceived might potentially be in your niche. And I maxed out my followers. It was like 7,500. You can't follow any more than that. I've now followed 750. I literally had to spend.
Oh, it's awful.
Months. I had to spend months doing like 30 a day because I kept getting banned, unfollowing people, and I was just absolutely cutthroat. So I've curated my kind of following to people that are either my own clients, people that, you know, my own clients, my own friends, people that I've kind of met through Hyrox and through the industry, whether that's gym owners, whether that's whatever, people that I, you know, actually want to engage with and consume their content. And that's something I would definitely encourage people to do, is to be really cutthroat with who you follow, because it's like social media is an environment, and we're influenced by our environment. So if you're just following all of these influencers who are just posting these running videos, you are just constantly being bombarded with this just like perfect picture image of this is what the goal is. This is what, I should be aspiring to and comparing yourself to. Whereas if you can just be absolutely cutthroat and just be like, right, I'm only going to follow people that I believe give me value. And same with who's following you as well. Like I'm cutthroat with if any kind of like bots or just people that I'm like, that doesn't even look like a real profile. I just point blank remove it. So like my following is probably much lower than it would have been over the course of the last 2 years of, really investing in time into social media. Like I say only at like just under 9,000 followers, I think, but I remove probably hundreds of people a month just because I don't want those people on my follow list taking away the ability for my actual followers, people who I would perceive actually care about me and want to consume my content, from seeing it. Because Instagram only shows your content to like 10% of your following or something like that. I forget the exact number. So if I've got 10,000 followers, just for math's sake, my content's only been shown to 1,000. And if it's showing my content to 1,000 sex bots, like no one's seeing my content, which isn't helpful. Whereas if you look at the following of people who have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers, they probably have a large percentage of just random accounts that aren't actually engaging in their content. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think something else I just thought as well, like if you're looking at someone's profile, is who are they serving? Like what? Like who is this content serving? And like you say, if it's all topless, emotional running posts and stuff, like is that really like what is their intention there? Who is behind that content? Is it someone who's genuinely like looking to put out good knowledge into the space or whatever, or is it just someone looking to grow their following? And maybe they have a combination of two, because it's a business at the end of the day. But if you take a snapshot of their profile, who do you think they're serving? You get a good indicator of what type of coach they are, and or indeed if they are actually a coach. Yeah. Because real coaches buzz off helping people, and like that's like the one thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and like this, like the points I guess that we're trying to make and I'm trying to get across is like I'm not trying to badmouth, devalue those people. Like again, just like using those two examples of like Jake and Meg. Like Jake is now a professional athlete. Like his purpose for social media is to grow his presence.
Hyrox darling.
That's his number one priority with his social media, is to provide value for the brands that sponsor him, grow his, exposure so that more people invest in him. Like if he has 10 million followers, brands will give him more money.
And it'll be the same for those brands as well. Those brands will be pushing him to do more.
Yeah.
Red Bull, Hyrox, because it pushes their brands. Yeah. Definitely Hyrox, I would imagine.
Yeah.
He was on Men's Health, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly that.
So it's huge for Hyrox.
So, he and others in a similar situation, it's not a worthwhile investment for them to be trying to put out really thoughtful coaching-based information, because that is not their business anymore. Like I do actually, but I think Jake actually does have like a program as well. Like I believe he works with what's his name, the guy from CrossFit JST in Wigan. I think they have like a collaborative coaching plan thing together. So like I know Jake does. I think he still does do that, some of that stuff. But just kind of using that as a concept more than anything. Again, not to like
pick on any one person,
like more just an example and a thought process of other people in perhaps similar situations. And then when you're at that level, the products that you are perhaps going to be more invested in is probably going to be apps and things like that. Like when you have 1 million followers, you have this kind of your funnel for generating clients, generating revenue is so much bigger that you have the ability to invest into something like an app. Because if, putting the numbers on it, let's say if you need 100 people to get one sale, well, for me, it doesn't make sense to have an app, because if I've got, let's say I had 10,000 followers, well, if only 1 in every 100 people is potentially going to buy from me, that's not a lot of sales. 10,000 followers is what getting me
100.
100 sales. Cool, right? Well, if I'm charging $29.99 for an app, that's not making me a lot of money. And it's a lot of money to invest into something like an app, and the amount of sales and ads and all that kind of stuff that has to go into supporting something like that, it doesn't make sense. Whereas if I did have 1 million followers, 100% I would have an app, and I would be channeling a lot of money into promoting that as much as possible, because that is a good revenue option for that amount of following that I've developed. Whereas, for the lower number of following, it makes sense to have a more kind of high touch point, personalized service, and the content that I put out is going to be aligned with that. I'm going to put a lot of high context, high touch point content out, because I'm speaking to individuals. I'm having conversations. I'm in my DMs speaking to people as individuals to create a relationship, to help people on an individual level and work with people on an individual level. So my content kind of has to reflect that. Whereas, again, 1 million followers, yeah, if I'm absolutely yoked and got 1 million followers, you better believe I'm going to be putting out that running video on repeat and building that following as big as possible, so that the biggest brands want to pay me money to post that video more, ultimately.
All right, man. Let's talk about coaching practices, philosophy. Let's get into the weeds. Tell me your super geeky concepts. I'll let you just freestyle. Let's talk about coaching.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I kind of start off with, I'm not going to claim to have all the answers. I definitely don't. I do actually think that is a mark of, not to be like, I don't know everything, therefore I'm the best coach. But from a perspective of, I think it is a trait of a good coach that they recognize what they do and what they don't know, and where the limits of their knowledge and experience are. And I think that at present, in the Hyrox sphere, as we kind of alluded to earlier, it's very much in its infancy, and there are very much a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon, and this is their first experience of coaching. They are doing their Hyrox Foundation and Level 1 course, which take a couple of weeks, if you know what you're talking about, at most. And they are maybe getting a job at a Hyrox gym, and they are now a coach. They're an in-person coach. They're starting an online program. Again, if they've got any kind of following, if they've got some, good video content from the Hyrox races, and yeah, they can kind of create the what's the word? Kind of perception that they are a good coach quite quickly. The illusion. And yeah, I think that will definitely change. But I think in terms of my philosophy on coaching and things like that, I very much approach Hyrox from the perspective of, it is a sport first and foremost. So we do have to approach the performance side of it as a sport. And the main difference between training for Hyrox as a sport and training in general is more so how you approach the season and how you approach progression throughout the season. So you can't just be like, every race I'm going to go through a training cycle and peak for this race. We can't just do that if we're treating it as a sport. We have to think of it from a perspective of, right, let's say you are someone who's going to qualify for World Championships. That's your peak. You are trying to, from June to June, lay your training out in a way that helps you be at your best in June. When you get to the World Championships, that's when you need to be at your best. So as you move through the season, and let's say using the UK as the example, Birmingham's in October. That's the start of the competitive season. You've got Birmingham, Dublin, London. That's kind of your like first part of the season. We then have a little bit of break over December, January. We then have Manchester, Glasgow, London. Obviously, being in the UK and the races being difficult to get into, people are kind of very much jumping around the entirety of Europe and kind of racing around there. So you've kind of got this before Christmas and after Christmas period. So the intention really for someone who's treating it as a sport should be to have this kind of development across the season. So you would have like part of the season pre-Christmas where you're looking to, maybe just race. You're racing to get fitter. And the goal is to maybe improve from race to race, but you're not necessarily look to be at your absolute peak. So training during that time might not be super hyper specific.
Cobweb dusting.
Yeah, you're kind of brushing out the cobwebs, just kind of getting back into it. And then that kind of period post-Christmas, more so your February, March, April time, that's where we're going to see a notable shift towards much more specific training. Maybe we're not looking to massively develop those less specific qualities like absolute peak strength, longer aerobic endurance. That should already have been developed in the first part of the season. And then as we get closer and closer to Worlds, we're going to get more and more specific and perhaps let go even more of some of those less specific qualities. That's kind of how I would perceive approaching Hyrox as a sport and as an athlete. You can still approach it as a sport and not perhaps classify yourself as an athlete, in which case you've kind of got this general athletic population. So that would be like athletic population, Hyrox is a sport. Mm-hmm. Then you've got general athletic population, which is someone who is probably still training exclusively for Hyrox, but they are not necessarily at that level where they perhaps need to have that incredible level of specificity. They are perhaps in a place where they would still benefit from continuing to push up those general qualities all year round. Like if someone isn't strong, then they're not necessarily going to benefit from sacrificing their strength.
Yeah, you don't want them to do like Hyrox specific for 12 weeks.
Yeah, it's like cool.
Yeah, because they don't have enough muscle to kind of handle that for the long term.
Yeah, exactly that. And we might do something like a 2 to 6 week race specific block, but then we're going to jump straight back into that more general training and continue to build them up as a functional human, if you like. And then kind of further down the line that you've got very much just like Gen Pop. We're maybe not going to do that much specific training. We're just kind of focus on building their running base, building their strength base, practicing the movements. And then maybe we do a couple of Hyrox specific workouts just to help them kind of practice it in those few weeks leading up to the race. And then we kind of just get straight back into training from Monday. And it's just this continual development of general qualities. So that's kind of how I maybe categorize people. But in terms of like my approach, I very much believe in training qualities. So I will look at someone and go, right, we're trying to develop strength. We're trying to develop power. We're trying to develop skill, movement skills. So if someone is very new to running, we're treating running as a skill, not necessarily an energy system development tool. So it's like if someone has never really run before, I'm not going to be like, right, Monday is zone 2, Tuesday is threshold, Wednesday is VO2. I'm going to be like, we're going to do a 40-minute easy run. And the goal is make sure it's easy and your breathing is somewhat controlled throughout, because they're not training hard enough. Obviously hard is relative, but they're not training hard enough or often enough to warrant that level of kind of hyper specific training. It's more like, this should be hard, this should be kind of moderate, this should be kind of easy. and let's just focus on building these qualities. Let's get you a bit stronger, get you a bit fitter, get you a bit faster. And then as you progress, we can start to make things a little bit more specific and a little bit more kind of tailored to different goals, perhaps. But kind of across all people's, the general population, the general athletic, and the athletes, very much approaching it from a perspective of, we need to just identify what qualities you need to improve to have a positive impact on your race performance. So if we need to get stronger, cool, right, we're going to strength train in a way that helps you improve your ability to produce force in certain patterns. We're going to build your squat, build your lunge, build your hinge, etc. We're going to generally build your ability to tolerate higher volumes of running. We're going to build your ability to ski and row better at a faster pace, longer duration, build your muscular endurance. We're going to get you doing more reps over time. So you can show me that you can do 100 quality bodyweight squats, 200 quality bodyweight squats. Okay, cool. Well, then we can maybe look at starting to, throw in some more wall balls, because you've showed you've got this just base of fitness, this base of capacity across these different qualities. And then, making that more specific to Hyrox, we're going to look at Hyrox and break down and go, right, what qualities are needed to excel? We need a certain amount of kind of power. We need a certain amount of endurance. So based on where someone's at, when they'll come in, we'll run them through a series of kind of fitness tests and, general conversations around their previous training history and previous sporting endeavors. And then from there, we can go, right, this is what you bring to the table. This is what we need to be able to either complete a Hyrox or compete at Hyrox. And there's definitely a key difference there. And then we just move people closer towards that end of the spectrum. It's like, here's where you are, here's where we need to be, here's what we need to work on. Let's kind of go from there. That's in a nutshell kind of how I communicate my approach to developing someone for Hyrox. But as I said, it very much comes down to who you're working with and what they're bringing to the table, because it is a hybrid race. We have these different skills, movements, and qualities that need to be developed. People are going to be coming into that process with vastly different experiences. Again, coming back to what we said earlier, if someone's been a GB swimmer for 10 years, they have a very robust aerobic base. They have a very robust level of general fitness. Their lower body strength is probably lacking. So that's probably the thing that we need to work on the most. But vice versa, you've got someone coming in from a powerlifting background. They are strong, but they probably have zero ability to work aerobically or any base level of ability to tolerate running. So the approach for those people is going to be very different. So it's not like, here's how you train for Hyrox. It's no, here's how these people might train for Hyrox, and here's how these people over here might train for Hyrox, because they have very different kind of, very different skills that they're bringing to the table, strengths and weaknesses, I guess.
A good example is like I interviewed Alexander Ronchevich the other week.
Yeah.
And a great example where it's like, there's no point in me saying like, what's your morning routine? Like, what's your training look like? How can we replicate you as the world champion? He was swimming every day for like 3-4 hours for 10 years.
Yeah.
Do that, and then you can maybe copy off what he's doing now. So it's
Lucy Davis, same example. Was pretty sure she was GB swimmer. One of my friends who used to be a GB swimmer used to train with her, and she's had a six pack since she was 10, because she was just like a high level swimmer.
Swimmers have such a good advantage, don't they? It's crazy.
Yeah, I just like any of those sports. I think swimming, just the volume of because it's not impact.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, because you get runners who do the equivalent cardio work, but
Yeah.
then the knees are fucked. They've not done strength training. Like,
Yeah.
it's so catabolic, isn't it?
Yeah. Whereas like the swimmers, just the volume, because you can do volume, it just
Mm.
comes down to like not necessarily who does the most, but there's definitely a significantly higher bar that you have to meet to be competitive and successful. Because it's just, you can just do it for hours and hours and hours. And then also you've got the other training alongside that. So it's like you're in the pool for 4 or 5 hours a day, 2 3 hours in the morning, 2 3 hours at night. But then you've also got your strength and conditioning. You've also got your off feet conditioning as well. Like, just the amount of work that they're doing is just absolutely bananas. And then, I mean, that's just swimming. But then you get into triathlon as well, and it's just like the volume of biking and swimming is just mental.
Have you got any sort of like numbers that you look for? Let's say someone's competing, they're looking to compete in the men's
Yeah.
pro, something like that. They're doing like 5 races a season. Where do you look at, like, what would you be looking for where you go, okay, this person's just done this race, rather than going straight back into Hyrox training, actually, let's test their squat. Let's bring them back up, because maybe we need to do like a mini strength block. And then how do you look at, I don't know if there's a word for it, but almost like mini periodization. Like, do you do like a week off and then like a mini strength block before getting them back into doing specific stuff? Because I presume the answer would be, if you're very strong and you're very capable and you've got a very good base already, then you can do probably Hyrox specific all season, right? How do you pass those things out?
Yeah. So that's one of the challenges with Hyrox, is the fact that because it's a mixed modality kind of hybrid thing, where you, particularly at the pro level, like I think at the open level, the amount of strength needed is incredibly low. And that's not to kind of disregard how challenging it is for some people. Like, if you are someone who,
if you've just been fell running all your life,
like
you might struggle.
If you're coming from a running background, or you are just, like, if you are someone who, goes to classes a couple of times a week, like that's your training, you just train to be generally fit and healthy. Like, the sleds might be challenging for you, but in the context of strength, you're still doing 50 meters. You are still working for 3+ minutes for some people. That isn't on the spectrum of strength. That is very much minimum strength endurance, but realistically, it's just muscular endurance. Even though it feels heavy, but if you can do 16 steps, it's like, even if you just compare that to like reps, 16 step ups, you wouldn't be like, oh, that's strength. You'd be like, that's kind of like strength endurance. It's getting towards muscular endurance at that point. Obviously, like a heavy set of 16 step ups is still, you need to be strong to achieve that. But
what's the difference between strength endurance and muscular endurance?
So you would kind of classify it as like, you've got like absolute strength, which is like 1 rep max. Let's just say it's like, how much weight can you physically move, period, kind of thing. You could maybe say like maybe 1 to 5 reps would be that absolute strength. And how we would maybe classify that is, there's a much bigger neurological component to that. It's your ability to coordinate your body to produce maximal force. As you start moving further away from that 1 to 5 reps, there's a bit less of a skill component, there's a bit less of a neurological component, and it becomes more about how well can you just contract those muscles. And
your body's capacity.
You maybe don't need to be as skilled in the movement, kind of thing, which is why we would typically move away from bigger patterns as the reps generally start to increase, and we've maybe become a little bit more isolated. Typically, it's like, you 1 to 5, to 8 to 10, maybe, yeah, we are going to be back squatting, whatever. As we start creeping above 10 reps, it's more like, maybe we might be better off doing something a bit more isolated, a bit more controlled, whether that's a split squat, whether that's a leg press, whether that's a leg extension as we creep up,
Yeah, you're not doing 30 deadlifts, are you?
Yeah, like unless you're doing, CrossFit and student workout, kind of hitting that. But yeah, so kind of from the pro level, I think that's where strength is much more relevant, in the sense of, like, your 1 rep max back squat probably isn't going to have a significant, as long as it's like a base level, like if you can maybe squat your own body weight on like a back squat for a couple of reps, you're probably strong enough to be able to excel within the open as much as you would want to. Whereas at the pro level, I am going to give an example of a caveat to this, which is, I always have to give this caveat when I'm explaining this to clients or I'm having this conversation with people, but we'll come back to that in a sec. But generally, there is going to be more of a correlation between like absolute strength or, strength levels in general and your Hyrox Pro performance. What I always like to say to people is, like, if all else is equal, the stronger person will win. So it's like, if running is equal, if aerobic capacity, skiing, rowing, whatever is equal, the person who has a higher back squat will have the ability to produce more force. So the sled is going to be a lower percentage of their maximum output. So
would you not say that across both the open and the pro, though, or is it just?
Yes, but because the weights are that much lighter, it's a much less significant degree of force needed to move the sled. So it's like, yes, that as a statement would be true. The person, if all else is equal, the person who has the higher back squat, let's say, is probably going to have an advantage. But because the strength requirements are so low, the numbers that we're talking about are much lower.
But in the open, the person who has the higher VO2 max could win out over the strength person.
Yeah, so that's why
it's not always in the pro necessarily.
Yeah, so that's why it's always from a perspective of if all else is equal, because it's like you will have that argument of, is it better to be, have a double body weight back squat and a 5K of here, or is it better to have a 5K of here and a double body weight or a 1.5 times body weight back squat? Like, there's going to be a lot of individual factors that go into that as well. Like, there'll be different body types, different muscle fiber types, different training backgrounds that will kind of come into it. I think someone like Graham Halliday was an example of that. He came in, he had a very robust strength background and would just dominate the sleds. But his running capacity was lower relative to a Rich Ryan, for example. And then you obviously have Hunter, who was the strongest of all of them, but also had an incredible running capacity, power, speed, like all of the things. He just had all these different skills that broadly stemmed from his strength, but he also had the running capacity to support it, which is why he was so dominant. That's changing a little bit now. He obviously still has the world record. So up until this point, we can't disregard that that is perhaps the best way to approach it. But, James Kelly being a second away, that's potentially going to change, because James is definitely not as strong as Hunter. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. But I think coming back to your question, I just realized I haven't answered it. Like, strength versus strength endurance. So that absolute strength, let's say like 1 to 5 reps, how much weight can you move? Strength endurance is going to be kind of like sustaining still a high amount of force, but for just a little bit longer. So maybe you could say strength endurance is like 6 to 12 reps, arbitrarily, let's say. It's like, it's still quite heavy. Like, if you're doing a heavy set of 10 reps on the back squat, you're still producing a pretty high amount of force, and it still requires a certain amount of effort. That's kind of what you would think like the pro sled. Like, you do half a length of pro, none of the pros, I believe, are doing all 4 lengths of the sled back to back at the pro weight. So it's definitely not max strength, because they're doing maybe 16. For me, it's about 32 steps end to end for that 12.5 meters. So like 16 steps is halfway. So, that is that more strength endurance end of the spectrum. It's not absolute strength. But if you're doing, 2 lengths back to back, we're kind of into the realm of muscular endurance. You're doing 32 steps end to end. You're doing 2 lengths back to back. That's 64 steps. That's 64 reps, the way you would want to think of it. That's muscular endurance. That's a high number of contractions at a sub-maximal effort kind of thing. And that's kind of how you would maybe classify it, is like the amount of effort needed to produce the rep gets lower and lower as you move towards muscular endurance. The skill likely goes down as well.
So like I guess like the guys with the bodybuilding background probably have quite a good strength endurance because they'll be training like 8 to 12 reps a lot.
Yeah.
But those higher, like the muscular endurance is totally different.
Yeah. And there's, as you, at both ends of that strength endurance is spectrum is probably where we would kind of probably classify more traditional hypertrophy training, because mechanical tension is one of the, arguably the biggest driver of muscle hypertrophy. As you kind of get closer to the absolute strength, the amount of time under tension is much lower. But as you kind of creep north of, let's say north of 15 reps, like anywhere between 5 and 30 reps is potentially optimal, providing you choose an appropriate exercise to facilitate that is optimal for hypertrophy. Maybe as you start creeping above 20 reps, we start getting into a conversation of, how optimal is it? But that 5 to 20 range is where hypertrophy training is basically going to exist. And as we start getting above that, we start getting more into like muscular endurance, and we're not maybe having enough tension per rep to facilitate a change or challenge the body enough to facilitate a change.
So I feel like there's going to be lots of people moving up to pro in this next season because of the world qualification. Well, I know because I couldn't get a ticket for pro at Birmingham yesterday. So, and it's a very different approach to training in the open.
Yeah.
How should we look? And this, let's be honest, it's a selfish question. I'm wondering about myself. So, like normal, like last season, I'll give you an example. Like worked out really well. Started with an open, then I did a little bit of doubles towards Christmas, and then I went back to open at Glasgow and peaked really nicely. Dead pleased, massive PB.
Sub 70 was that?
Yes, I did 60, 65, 50.
Nice.
So the goal was sub 70, and then I was like fucking astounded, but that I got that. So that was great. Went unbroken on the wall balls, fucking awesome. And then they changed the qualifications to pro, and I'm like, you bastards. I was hoping to like have another season at open, rocking them 100 wall balls unbroken, a few more wall ball patches, but there we go. So I was just thinking then when you were talking about, these numbers of I suppose what I'm wondering is, when are we ready to go into the pro weights? Because it's not the same as going like, let's get a couple of opens under my belt and then go pro, because doing that might actually detriment your strength, because you're going to be going through like a catabolic process, hammering Hyrox, right? So in a weird way, I feel like maybe you want to start off sooner doing pro rather than build to it. What are your thoughts?
I think it's not a question that has like a straightforward answer, because there isn't a barrier to doing the pro as far as like anyone can sign up and enter it. You can't really, you perhaps can't make an argument whether you should, train for the pro but compete in open, as far as like, if you're thinking of it as a sport and you're thinking, right, okay, like I'm going to be in this for the next 5 years, whatever, and I am training to be good at the pro, but until I'm at a point where maybe I can achieve the times I want to achieve or be competitive, I'm going to stay in the open. So my race performance is where I want it to be, but I'm training to be able to long term be at the level I want to be at in the pro. But you can then look at it the other way and go, well, if that's the case and you're striving to be the best you can at pro, your open times don't really matter as such, kind of thing. Like if the pro is the goal and that's what you're training for, but you're racing an open, it's like, cool, well, you're not actually measuring.
Seems pointless. I feel like I'm just kicking the can down the road if I'm doing more open races.
Yeah, but I mean, like, but then it also comes down to like what's the goal? I think now that they're moving towards the pro is what qualifies you for world championships. I think for me that clarifies it more. It's like, what is your goal? Is your goal to go to world championships? Cool, right? Pro is what you should do.
Yes,
because that is what that's going to be the best measurement of your improvement. Like if you want to go to worlds, let's say you need to come top 3 arbitrarily, you need to come top 3 in your age category, and on average we need to achieve 60. I mean, who knows what time it's going to be in the next couple of years, but let's say arbitrarily you need to get a 62-minute time in the pro somewhere in the world to put yourself in a position to qualify for worlds, minus, roll downs and things like that. But let's say 62 minutes is that's what you need. Probably actually sub 60. Anyway, well, that's then the line. That's what we're working towards. So if we're not doing pro races, we're not going to see where we're at. We can obviously measure it through training and we can do sims and we can do whatever. But from a race perspective, your open time is now irrelevant because that's not what we're measuring. So I think that for me has helped simplify it. And that's probably the answer that I would give to people is if the goal is to go to worlds, do the pro and look to actively improve that because you need race experience at that level and you need to be racing against those people that are achieving those times. That's a big factor. Further away when this season, even where both categories are qualifying, and this is a conversation that I find myself having with some of my kind of higher level clients, where they're kind of in this place where they could come top 3 in either division. And the question we're trying to answer is which one potentially offers you the best opportunity to qualify. So using one of my clients as the example, it's like they could come top 3 open doubles, they could come top 3 pro doubles, she could come top 3 women's pro, and she could potentially come top 3 women's open. And it's just like, but it depends who shows up on the day, because all it takes is someone from the Elite 15 to decide to do a open race, and all of a sudden that qualification spot's gone. All it takes is someone from the Elite 15 to show up and wants to get a time or just do a race for fun, and they've taken the top spot. And instead of the qualification time being an hour and 6, it's 58 minutes kind of thing. Like that's all it takes. So that's what's made it challenging this season to really decide which race is potentially the most appropriate for you to do at a particular race. But because I have very much been of the mindset since before the start of this season that they will start to move towards the pro being the only division that qualifies. So I've kind of been nudging my clients in that direction. I'm like, if you want to have a crack at qualifying through the open in this particular race, that's cool. But long term, if you really are in this sport for the next 5 years and you really do want to go to worlds and excel, we need to be training you as a pro athlete now. Because next season, as has now happened, you won't be able to qualify through the open. So do you think you'll be in a better position by starting to train to maximize your strength and build those qualities that a pro level athlete needs now, or wait until the end of this season after doing loads of open races and then start to focus on your strength? So that's kind of the mindset that I've kind of tried to not push on people, but just kind of explain and communicate is like what your goal is will largely dictate what the right answer is to that question. If you really want to go to Worlds, you have to train as a pro athlete now, because the standard is only going to get higher and higher and higher. All of the open people that are very good will ultimately move to the pro, and all it will take is them to just do a little bit more strength training, and their open capacity will transfer over to the pro. We're probably not going to see this massive shift of all of the people winning the open all of a sudden don't get anywhere near it at the pro. Some of them are they just are better in an open race because maybe they aren't quite as strong. But give them, after this season, give them 16, 20 weeks or whatever, the kind of the first half of next season to really focus on their strength and power. All of a sudden they're competitive in the pro again, kind of thing. So yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, agreed. Absolutely. No point fucking about.
Yeah.
Let's go pro. All right, mate. Well, we're gonna have to wrap up shortly. So thank you for this. I feel like we could chat for ages. So we'll have to do a follow up. Before we finish, I want to ask you if you could send a 60-second message to every Hyrox competitor in the world looking to improve the Hyrox this season, what would you tell them?
Don't rush the process. The qualities that are needed to excel within Hyrox, particularly at the higher level, take years to develop. To develop a high-level aerobic base takes years. To develop a high level of strength and movement competency alongside that. So not just can you do a questionable back squat to about 70 degrees with a half decent weight. No, can you do a good quality full range back squat that looks the same regardless of load with a high amount of load? Takes years. And if you try to rush the process of becoming a high level athlete, you will exponentially increase your risk of burning out, of getting injured, and not achieving your goal. So I would say, if you really do want to be the best that you can be, aim to train in a way that facilitates long-term development. Don't train to be your best next week. Train to be your best next year, in the next 5 years, and accept that some things will just take time. Like, you can only progress your running so fast. You can only progress your strength so fast. And the faster you try to, or the more you try to shortcut that process, the greater the risk that comes with that. As we said earlier, the athletes that are at the top of the sport have years, if not north of a decade's worth of training experience at that level. They didn't just decide last year that they wanted to be a professional athlete. Most of them have been training like a professional athlete since they were like 10 years old. E.g., Alex Ronkovic, ex high-level swimmer. Pelayo, ex, I believe he was a professional triathlete. Hunter's been, at the top of various hybrid, Spartan, whatever sports for more than 10 years. Rich Ryan, any of the guys at the top level have been training like professional athletes almost their entire lives. They haven't just decided to start training 20 hours a week. They have built up to that, and now they are just maintaining that. They are maintaining their training. They're obviously pushing themselves, but the amount of training that they're doing, they are maintaining that. They aren't building on that. So yeah, don't rush the process, accept where you are, and do what you need to do to take the next logical step forward. And if you continue to approach your training in that way, you will continue to improve, and you will create the opportunity to achieve the level of results you want to achieve.
Yeah, man, that's gold. Thank you. And the cool thing is as well is a lot of people will go 5 years, fuck that. But if you're the sort of person that hears that and goes, yeah, 5 years, 3 years, whatever, let's fucking go, then you'll be set apart, won't you?
Yeah. Olympic, again, Hyrox isn't the Olympics, but Olympic athletes train for 4 years to run one race. They will train for 4 years using, let's say, weightlifting as the example. Olympic weightlifters will train for 4 years to add 1 to 2 kilos to their total.
Yeah.
Like they will train with that. Every session is geared around achieving that result in 4 years' time. Yes, there'll be competitions along the way, world championships, whatever, and they will peak for certain competitions along the way. But they are approaching their training in a way that helps them continue to train for the next 4 years for one competition. Hyrox obviously isn't that. And, we don't have to approach it in everything I'm doing now is to be my best at Hyrox Worlds in 4 years' time. But we should broadly approach training with a degree of that mindset of you are training to be able to continue to train and improve for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And the specifics of what you're training for might change across that time. You might not train for Hyrox in 4 years, but some part of what your training looks like now will still be there, whether that's the strength, whether that's the running, whether that's the kind of the mixed ergs and whatever. So you should be approaching training in a way that helps you continue to show up and continue to improve, not get the absolute most out of every set of everything that you do every single day, because that is not a sustainable practice.
Yeah, man. And not that I'm looking for brownie points, but I had my first marathon booked. I was supposed to be doing a Manchester Marathon this weekend because, I'm a good runner. I should do a marathon, right? That's the thing you do. Yeah. And I made the decision based on my long-term goals in Hyrox to cancel, sell my ticket, because if Hyrox is my goal, for me, that's not the right thing to be doing because of injury risk, because of my background and stuff. And so many people why you should do a marathon? I'm like, no, Hyrox is the thing. So, so I'm doing kind of my off season is kind of CrossFit, strengthy stuff, which works a bit nicely, more nicely. But Jack, this has been awesome. Thank you, mate. Appreciate all the truth bombs and insights you've been dropping.
Pleasure.
Where should people go if they want to find out more about what you do?
So Instagram is probably the best place, is at JC the Hybrid Coach. And then that's probably the best place to get hold of me. Drop me a DM and I'd be more than happy to help answer any questions that you have. Obviously, as I said, I'm a coach. So if that is something that you are interested in learning more about, just drop me a DM and we can have a chat about that.
Awesome. And I will put a link to your profile in the show notes so people can go through on that as well. Thank you again. And I'll speak to you soon and have a great day, mate.
Thank you. And you.
Hey guys, it's me. Thank you so much for watching that episode and congratulations for making it all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. A few things before you get going. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you enjoyed this episode, the kindest thing you can do for me is to share it with a friend or family member. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to both my guests and myself. And if you made it this far, why don't you drop me a DM?